Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 479 Your Victory Over Irreverence, Part 2. How reverence reverses the damage of irreverence within your heart. The podcast objectives are analyze what is at stake in your war with irreverence, reveal the most accurate reflection of your soul, analyze the link between your perspective and your desire, and analyze your battles with irreverence. Everything is at stake. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 337 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we began analyzing your victory over irreverence, i.e., the focal degree of prejudice. Now, I concluded that podcast by revealing how this is the most important lesson I have taught in this exposition of lawlessness. Here is why. Reverence marks the interval where your heart achieves understanding. And where there is no understanding, there is no path for us to become masters of the Father's will, i.e., doers of the word. And if we have no path to becoming doers of the word, there is no way for us to be saved. Not only this, but everything I have taught you since July 1st, 2024, and everything you have learned, and all the growth you have made would be for naught. Alas, there would be no value, for after all this time, there is no way for you to be saved. Now, I trust I have gotten your attention with this statement because it is as dire as it is true. And it is why I have constantly spoken to the critical nature of this interval of holiness and how there is a lot at stake in your mastery of the fear of Elohim. To be quite blunt, everything is at stake. To wit, succeeding this crucial intersection will require you to operate at the highest levels of virtue, obedience, and faith. And should you fail, you will find yourself in a bind, for you will not only lose your heart, but very soon you will also lose your mind. My dear friends, you've come too far, and I trust you can see this is no time to join yourself to the spiritually departed. And thus, we must continue analyzing your war with the spirit of irreverence and how you can attain the victory. Let's get started. A true reflection of you. Now, we concluded the most recent podcast with a powerful revelation, making the connection between the scriptural precedent of a heart of understanding and the primary illustration of reverence in your quest. Enter the eyes of your heart. Now, first things first, this is one of the most powerful revelations I have shared in this podcast ministry, and I trust you can see it. To wit, the spiritual connection between the eyes of your heart and the power of understanding. Now, true, this will make a lot more sense when we move on to analyzing the degree of knowledge. And yet, at least one thing should be clear at this time. Get this. As the focal degree of knowledge, Understanding is the primary application of reverence. Ergo, where there is no reverence, there can be no understanding. And this, my friends, proves that reverence is the interval in your quest where your heart achieves understanding. Not only this, but in giving your heart understanding, the spirit of reverence achieves an amazing feat, which I will offer as a revelation. As the eyes of your heart, reverence not only provides your heart with understanding, but he also gives you perspective within the seat of your soul. Now, brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, this is huge. Remember, perspective is a feature of your mind. And although your mind is indeed powerful, it is the gateway into your soul. And thus, the following is true. The perspective within your mind is limited due to its position within your soul. You can see this by observing the diagram to the right. Your mind is on the periphery of your soul. Ergo, your perspective from this setting is somewhat limited. To wit, it is limited as to the impact it has on the action you will eventually take in accordance with your will. As you can clearly see, there are many processes in between your perspective and your actions. Now, look at where your heart is in the diagram. Vis-a-vis, your heart is in the center of your soul. This is no doubt the most strategic place within your entire being. Vis-a-vis, your heart is the best place for your perspective and your spiritual sight. But alas, your heart by default does not have perspective. It does not possess spiritual sight. Quite the contrary, for your heart and its origin is primarily driven by desire. Here again, you can see this by the image to the right. Vis-a-vis, your desires are at the center of your heart. Not only this, but you can also see how the desires of your heart are the primary drivers of the transactions of your will. And we have mentioned this before. My dear friends, we all have the freedom of choice to choose the path we desire to follow and to take advantage of the opportunities we desire to translate into actions. And this is one of many reasons why no one will have an excuse at the judgment. It is because every voluntary action we take is a reflection of our truest desires. Not only this, but your truest desires are the conclusion of hundreds of mental and cordial processes. And this is why the desires of your heart, whether for good or for evil, are true and a true reflection of you. A connection between your perspective and your desire. Now, this reality reveals why the conquest of your heart is so critical in your quest. Not only this, but it also hardens the fact that your decision making process is the most crucial process that occurs in your entire being. Here is why. Your decision making process drives your truest desires, and it is driven by your truest desires. Now, if you think about it, this makes perfect sense. To wit, it is impossible for you to decide against your interest, for your truest interest is a reflection of your truest desires. For where there is no interest, there can be no desire. Facts. This speaks to why so many struggle to overcome their sinful nature and why they never end the deadly course of self rule. It is for the following reason, which I advise you to remember and to bookmark if you are led. The desires of your heart are often void of perspective, and thus many of your decisions are made in the dark. You can see this by analyzing the diagram to the right. To wit, there are tens of mental and cordial processes that occur between the intervals of perspective and desire. Therefore, ensuring that there is persistent alignment between your perspective and your desires is a near impossible endeavor. And it is impossible if you are not following the linear model of holiness. If you are, an amazingly wonderful thing will happen. And it is one of the most amazing and wonderful occasions within your entire being. And thus, I will offer it to you as a revelation. Your spiritual values create a bridge between your perspective and your desires. This opens the door for your heart to obtain perspective because your perspective is shaping your desires. Now, brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, this is huge. This is very huge. Let me tell you something. The primary reason why so many of us make bad decisions is because many of the desires of our hearts are void of perspective. And because our hearts are void of perspective, the decisions we make in life are not nearly as informed as they could be. That's the key, my friends, to it. By the Ruach of Elohim, we have the power to make good decisions, informed decisions. And yet, you will never unlock this power if you fail to follow the linear model of holiness. Here is why. Your heart will never achieve understanding the irreverence if you have not unlocked the power of spiritual values. We know this because the primary objective of spiritual values is to ensure your perspective on every matter is aligned with the Father's perspective on the matter. And what did we learn about perspective in the most recent podcast? If you recall, we learned that perspective is the key to unlocking the power of understanding, which begins in the mind, and yet it is achieved within the heart. Ergo, Yahuwah has designed the power of perspective to permeate our hearts and our minds. Now, the question of the hour is quite simply, how? To wit, how does the power of perspective permeate your mind and your heart? The answer is sure, and I've already told you in this section, vis-a-vis your spiritual values. Remember this, for it is a revelation. Your spiritual value system unites your desires with your perspective. And not just your perspective. My dear friends, your spiritual value system unites your desires with the desire and perspective of Elohim. You can see this by analyzing the diagram to the right. This is an illustration of your heart and your mind after you unlock your spiritual value system. Now, if you look closely, you can see there is now a connection between your perspective and your desire, a connection that is a byproduct of your spiritual value system. And this, my friends, is only one of the many upgrades that occurs within your soul when you unlock the power of your spiritual value system and you follow the linear model of holiness. Your battles with irreverence. Now, it shouldn't be too hard to see how your spiritual values pull off this amazing feat. To wit, Honesty performed a similar upgrade. Remember, your heart and its origin did not have a conscience, and yet it needed one, and badly. And so, what did she do? Honesty, my friends, gave your heart a conscience, vis-a-vis a moral compass, which always points in the direction of Yahuwah's will. And what, my friends, is the primary driver of honesty? The answer: spiritual values. Ergo, it makes perfect spiritual sense that your spiritual value system, like honesty, is designed to make major upgrades to your heart. And trust me, giving your heart perspective is a major upgrade. The reason why is sure, and we touched on it earlier in this most recent podcast. To wit, you cannot reign over lawlessness if you fail to get rid of every trace of lawlessness. Here is the inflection in the power of perspective. Get this: by providing your heart with perspective, you unlock the power to see every trace of lawlessness within your mind and within your heart. Now, brothers and sisters, hear me again as I say, this is huge. Look here, by unlocking the power of reverence, your heart can determine every current and potential outlet of lawlessness within your entire being. Here is why this is so crucial in your quest. There are still 16 primary degrees of lawlessness you must eliminate to achieve perfection in the Ruach, such that you can obtain the seal of Elohim. Notwithstanding, eliminating these spiritual diseases will not be nearly as difficult as your battles with doubt, disobedience, contempt, and prejudice, for the simple but sure fact that you will see each disease with the eyes of your heart in a powerful perspective of reverence. Here lies the power and the key. Let me tell you something. When you reverence Yahuwah, I say, when you truly reverence Yahuwah, you will never operate in lawlessness. Why? It's because the eyes of your heart are open, and now you have perspective. You, my friend, can finally see. Not only this, but you also perceive the dangers involved in operating in every ensuing degree of lawlessness. For they are all designed to reinstate prejudice, contempt, disobedience, and doubt. And thus, it is impossible for any man or woman who has unlocked the focal degree of the fear of Elohim to walk contrary to his will. It is impossible. Here again, it is because your heart has perspective. And now you can see the heart of reverence and understanding is the only heart that can be free. You can see this by observing the diagram below. To wit, the sensory region of your right complex has been renewed by reverence. As a result, every faculty and actor in your heart has now been renewed by the power of virtue and the fear of Elohim. All you have to do now is translate the breath of these powers to purify your opportunities with the spirit of worship. And you will, for when you unlock the power of spiritual values and reverence, you will find this is true. Worship is inevitable. It is all you can do. All you have to do is walk in your renewed perspective and in the spirit of reverence, do no sin. For look, listen, it has been written, by mercy and truth, crookedness is pardoned, and by the fear of Yahuwah, one turns away from evil. Now, here is the final word. Your heart will be quite defective if you fail to achieve perspective. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, we have spent the majority of this calendar year analyzing the ins and outs of your heart. And if you've been paying attention, then you can clearly see how the closer you get to freeing your heart, the more drastic the situation in your heart becomes. My dear friends, the reason why is sure, vis-a-vis, you are getting closer to the conclusion of your war with the Ruach of self. And the most intense battles in this war are transpiring within your heart. Not only this, but your most intense battles are with the spirit of irreverence and the deceptive process in which men and women elevate themselves and their will over Elohim and his will. And in doing so, the Ruach of self will harden his reign, fortifying it with prejudice, contempt, disobedience, and doubt. As for the Ruach of Elohim, he may not want to leave you, but your lack of reverence for Yahuwah will surely drive him out. Heretofore, I recommend never lose sight of what is at stake in your battles with irreverence. You'll be sorry if you do. For should you lose your battles with irreverence, there'll be no place in his kingdom for you. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on the word you have heard today. And as always, ask the Father to reveal the truth to you. For the children of Elohim live by conviction. And if he has not convicted you, or if you had not heard him concerning these matters, you should pray until you do. Today, I want you to meditate on the word I have shared. We covered a lot of material, and so that is the only assignment for today. Consider these matters, my friends, and be watchful as you pray. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 479, Your Victory Over Irreverence, Part 2. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 480, An Intro to Worship, Part 1. I will post this podcast on Wednesday, June 4th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim, continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.